Hey there YouTube, if you're a Power Apps developer, you're going to love today's video. We're stepping into the world of Microsoft Power Pages and exploring how to build apps using the Web API. Now you might be wondering, why Power Pages? Well, unlike Power Apps, which was designed for internal use, Power Pages allows us to create externally facing business websites and web apps. And the best part, it's all low code. But I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to dive a bit deeper into the Web API, which lets us perform create, read, update, and delete operations across all Microsoft Dataverse tables from our Power Page. Imagine being able to create a new account or update a contact without using a form or a multi-step form, all by using the Web API. Now, for all you web developers out there, we're going to approach this from a web developer's perspective. We'll explore how to enable the required site settings within the portal management app, configure permissions, and even create a web app. So whether you're looking to extend your capabilities or explore new avenues, this video is definitely for you. Let's get started. Every Power Pages development journey starts with the make.powerpages.microsoft.com website. This is the developer studio for Power Pages. When you log into this site, you'll be logging into your own Office 365 tenant in the make.powerpages environment. It's just like Power Apps where you've got make.powerapps. If you're interested in a sort of an introduction to Power Pages that will just sort of go through the bits and pieces and how it all falls in together, then let me know in the comments section below, and that will be something that I can do as a follow-up video to this video. Like I said, we're on the makepowerpages.microsoft.com site. This is the starting place for when you want to build a Power Pages application. You will need some other sites as well to get everything to work properly, and we'll touch on those as we go through, but this is where you'll start. So as you can see, I'm looking at my environment here, and I've got like a little welcome screen here, and I can see all the sites that I've built in Power Pages so far and what sites are active. Now, I've already got this site here called Demo. You'll also see on the top right hand corner here the environments that I've currently got running. Now, you may, when you first open the make.powerpages.microsoft.com site, you might actually see a message, something like this. So this basically means that you don't have access to create Power Pages or Power Page sites in your current Office 365 environment. So that's going to be something you take up with your system admin. One of the options you do have here is, and I'm pretty sure you should have this button if you are in the position of not having access, although this could potentially also get turned off, but turned off by the admin. But if not, hopefully you'll have, if you don't have access, hopefully you'll have this button which will say create a developer environment. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and created a developer environment in Power Pages. So once your environment is up and running, all you need to do next is create your site. Now you can choose the site from blank or one of the current templates, and that'll just sort of set up all the pages under a particular template that they have there. But I always like going with a blank site, and especially with the demo that I'm doing for you guys, I'll just choose a blank site. So we've just got a real minimal canvas to work with. If we, let's just assume that I've created a new site called demo, and then I'll go in and edit. So this brings up the main page, this brings up the main page for the development environment. And we can see here our navigation, and these are our pages that we've currently created. So I've got a home page, and then I've got an app test page, and these were just ones that I was playing around with before. So what we want to do is we're going to create something that is sort of generally known as a single page application. So first off, we want to do is create a new page. So let's just create a blank page. We don't really want any extra formatting. And we're going to call this, let's just call it YouTube Demo. Okay, so you can see here we're already getting prompted for this sort of out of the box setup, and we can create a form, a multi-step form, a list. We can insert a Power BI. So some of the stuff you may actually want to do. And if you're not a programmer at all, then you're most likely just going to stay in this world where you're, you're going to put these different components down onto the page and just work within what the limitations are of these components. But that's not what this video is about today. This video is about sort of ignoring this and going straight to what is behind this page. So up on the top right hand corner here, we can see we've got this edit code button, and this is just great. Like, you click on this and it opens up a new tab. Here we go, and there we go. We've got our page, or we've got this little tab on the side here talking about Copilot, but we don't need AI. We can do all of this on our own. So you can see that we've got the structure of our page open, and it's just a very simple div. That's all we have here, and we can work within this particular div here, and we can put all of our content that we want to build. Or we can put all of our HTML we want on our page within this div here. So there's nothing that we need to trim really from this point. Maybe we'll just trim this div, or we can even just put our stuff, our HTML inside of this div here. Now you see on the left hand side, we've got this tree, which is just our project. This is our site demo, and underneath the web pages. So all we're really concerned about is this page we created, which is called YouTube demo. And that's what I called it. Remember, I called it back here. I created this page called YouTube demo. So this is what this is. And under YouTube demo, we've got these three different, pages. So these are three different components that make up this page. And it's a little bit different from when you're creating a sort of website from scratch, because you'll create these files individually when you're building a website, but you don't need to do that in Power Pages. Power Pages has done it for you. And also Power Pages has linked all these together automatically. So you don't have to worry about any of the boilerplate to get this working. This is all ready to go. So obviously, if you have done some web development before, you know that, let me just close some of these. You know that that .html file contains all your HTML. A .js file contains all your JavaScript. So this is where all of our code is going to go for our site. And here, the .css file is where all of our style sheets or all of our additional styling is going to go underneath this particular file. So what I'll start with first up is a div. And I'm going to give this a class of form style 6. Now, we haven't defined any classes yet in our CSS, but we'll get to that later. For now, I'm just going to put this in here. I'm also going to give it some additional styling, inline styling. And for this, I'm just going to say min width is 100%. Let's open that up. So all of our application that we're building today is going to go inside of this. Let's separate that out so we can see that clearly, inside of this div. So what we want to insert inside of this div is our form. And we do that by using the form tag. And I'm going to give this form an ID, and I'm going to call it leave form, because today our demo application that I'm building today is going to be just a really simple leave form. And I usually use this example when doing demos and tutorials. So underneath here, we need to put our fields that we want to capture in our leave form. First off, I'm just going to give this a legend. Whoa, spelled that wrong. Just going to call that let's just call it Gino does stuff leave form. So for this application, I want to ask the user or the applicant what the date from and the date to that they want their leave for, and I'm going to capture both of those dates within my application. I'm going to input type of date. I'm going to give this an ID, and we're going to call this date from. We might also give it a name. I'm not sure if we need the name, but we'll give it a name field as well. We'll call it date from again. And that's all we need there. Now, if we want to give this a label, so just in the line above, I'm just going to create a label tag. And this is an easy way to give fields in your form labels. We'll just say label for, and here's where you put the ID of the field that this is a label for, and it'll just when the page renders to the screen, it'll just put the label nicely above the actual field. And within these two tags here, I'm just going to type date from colon. Now we want a date to field as well, so I'm just going to copy and paste that again, and I'm just going to say to date to, change the ID to date to, and the name to date to. So the next field I'd like to put on my leave form application is a field that the applicant can put in the reason that they're applying for leave. So just sort of like an explanation field where they can type maybe a short paragraph or several sentences just to explain why they're applying for leave. So for this type of field, I'm going to use a text area tag. I'll give this an ID of reason, and we've got some other properties here we can set. So I'm just going to say I'm going to give this 10 rows. Let's give it a name as well, and we'll just give that the same name. And of course we want a label as well. We just do this the same way, label for reason. And in the middle of these two tags, we want to put our text for our label, and I'll just put reason for leave request. So if we go and save that, if we click on the back tab to our Power Pages and click sync, we will get a updated version of that page. So as you can see, we've got our form sort of building out here, but there is no formatting at the moment, so the fields are just all over the place. So let's go back to our code tab. Well, what else do we need to capture on this form? Well, we need, let's just say we'll have date from, date to, and the reason. And let's just, to keep this super simple, let's just use a, let's maybe have a radio button as well. Radio buttons work a little bit different. Give this an ID of yes. So the name of the radio button will be medical, and the value will be yes. Now we need another one of those for our no option. So we'll just call this no. Its name is medical and the value is no. So I'll put a div above these radio buttons because I want a label to sort of encompass both of those radio buttons first. So I basically want to tell the user these radio buttons are for choosing if it's going to be a medical, is it medical leave or not. So is this request related to medical? No, that sounds a bit dumb. Is this a is the leave request related to medical? That sounds a bit silly. Anyway, you know what I mean. Okay, so for here we do want to label. I do want to label here for yes and for no. Okay, so let's save that. Take a look at what that looks like. Let's sync it. Okay, so we've got our date from, date to, leave request. Is this leave related to medical? And we have a yes and a no. It's completely no formatting there at all, as you can see, but at least we're getting our fields down. So, okay, so I think that's probably enough data to capture. So we're going to try to keep this super simple. So the last thing the form needs is a submit button. So we're going to put an input in at the bottom. Called ID submit. What type is this? It is a submit. And the value, which is going to be what is the button, what's the text on the button going to say? And this will be submit. All right, let's click save. So your file, save that. Go back to our Power Pages Studio and click sync. And we can see our submit button has appeared. Okay, so that's pretty much our form, but obviously our layout is completely messed up. So what we want to do next is go over to our CSS file and we can see it's completely empty. Now I have some CSS that I prepared earlier that I'm just going to paste inside of this file. Now I will, like I said before, I'll include all this code in the GitHub repository that I'll leave a link to in the comments section or in the section below the video, so you can get that there. So here we go, let's paste that in there, and this is going to cover a whole heap of things like how the form style is, like how that form.style6 class that, as you saw, I added it to the top of the form here, the top of the div. So that means anything, when we say things like form style 6 and then input text, we're saying anything under form style 6 container that is of type text or date or whatever will be styled in this certain way. So this is sort of a style that I've worked on for a while, but you could start really simple with your CSS styling and just address specific parts of your application and style in the way you like. The takeaway on this is that whatever styling you want to do for your form, make sure you're using your classes inside of your HTML, and then you just add your classes to your .css file and they'll appear in your application. So let's go ahead and save that. Now, as a good practice, whenever I save anything in here, like if I save the CSS file, so let me go ahead and hit save again on that, quickly saves it. I'll also go, if I've got the HTML open, I'll also go and save that. So you can see here, you get this message saying, this message that we talked about before. So I'll just click on overwrite. Now, if we go back to Studio and I click sync, let's see what that looks like. Right, this is looking quite a bit better. Quite a bit better. There's still some formatting problems. The other thing that we can do here is, so this is looking at it in the developer studio, but what you want to do once you start, your app sort of starts coming together, you want to actually preview it so you can see it just as the page itself without all this sort of development studio around it. And you want to see the page as it will render in your application. So if we click preview and I say desktop, so this is our leaf form as it's coming out. Now there's some stuff that I would like to change here. I don't like how these are all squished up against each other. And I also don't like the way this radio button is rendering. It really doesn't. I'd like these sort of buttons to be side by side. And I kind of want this date from and this date to be side by side as well. Now, luckily enough, I've got some CSS in here that does this. Now, like I said, this is not a CSS tutorial. So all this sort of stuff I'll leave for you to sort of work out. But there's, just to give you a quick explanation of what I've done here, I've created this class called form grid, and all this means is I've got a little grid that I can insert anywhere inside of my form, and what this will do is it'll put anything underneath this div, will put the fields side by side. So the way a HTML grid works is you declare something at the top level, like a div at the top level as a grid, and then divs underneath it will appear in a grid format or like a table format rather than just sort of underneath each other. So if I go back here and I find my date from and date to fields, so here's the labels and the input. So if I create a div, I'm just going to cut that and paste it inside of this div and give this, give this a class of form grid. Pretty sure I call that form grid. Yep, form grid. Form grid. Okay, let's click save. And if we go back here and we click sync, right. Okay, all right, I see what that's done is it's put the label on the left column and the actual input field on the right. So we don't want that. We want the labels and the input to appear above each other. So what we want to do with that is we want to create two divs underneath our form grid, and then we want to insert so let's click save, go back and sync that again. See what that looks like. Cool. Right, so now that's looking quite a bit better. I don't like I said before, I don't like how there's no gap here. So the other thing you can do in HTML, like you don't have to put everything in your CSS file and classes. So if you want to just put something quick like an inline style in, you can. Now, like I said, I wanted a gap between these two, so I could put here I could just put a style, and this style, inline styles will overwrite whatever's in the CSS. So this is the last bit of style that gets applied to the actual container. I just want to put a margin bottom of 2%. Oh, spelt that wrong. Let's click save, go back, sync that. All right, nice gap there now. Of course, we've got this other problem here where we don't have a gap here. So let's put that in. And we want the label and the text to be together. So we need another div. And this div will put style on. And we want margin bottom 2%. Again, so this is going to put a margin at the bottom, and everything inside of that will be grouped together, like will be considered the group of fields, and then the margin will go underneath those fields. So if we click save, go back and sync it. And this will kind of be how you will build your entire application. Well, this is how I go ahead and build all of my Power Apps or Power Pages applications. I just make some changes, sync, check them that they're okay, and keep going back and forward. And it's just a really good way to make sure that your page is progressing or your app is progressing exactly how you want it to look. Right, okay, so our last thing is our sort of radio button not appearing properly. So if I go back and remember we did this with form, well, we don't really want to we don't want it to split across, we don't want our radio buttons to split right across the page. I think all we really want to get rid of is, I'm not sure why I've got these BRs. BRs are just line breaks. Try that. Let's see what that does. Okay, that's pretty much what we want. I'd like a bit of a space between these two options. So how about we go here we put style. So this is after the yes option. We put a style and we put a margin right of, say, 20 pixels. Okay, it's good, but the only last thing is we'll probably just have a space here as well. Let's have a look at that. Let's sync that up. Yeah, I think so. That's cool. Good enough. All right. So now you can see with that sort of minimal effort, we get our application or our form looking really, really good. So before we go any further with coding up our application, let's make sure our Dataverse tables are in place and configured for saving our data from our app. So what we need to do first off is and this is, remember the bit at the beginning where I said that we need more than just this Power Pages Studio? Well, this is a bit that we need more than just Power Pages Studio. We actually need to go to the Power Apps Studio. So I've got this open here. So this is my make.powerapps.com environment and, make.powerapps.com website. And we just make sure that we're selecting the environment that we have built we're building our Power Pages in. So you can see I've got my developer environment selected, and there's no any Power Apps in here except for the portal management. So this portal management app you should have as well, especially if you created your Power Apps developer. And the portal management is something we also need, but just not at this point in time. We'll get to that in a second. First off, let's create our table, and let's call this table Chino does stuff, leave form. Yep. Okay, so that's good. Let's click save. And our first column is, let's just call this, I think this will just be name. Yeah, so this is, oh, we can call this anything we like. So let's make this the reason column. And we're going to make that a text area. So you saw I just hit that drop down and I can select text. Sorry, text area. Selecting text area. Okay, it's just coming up as text. Clicking update. We want a new one. We want date from. And this will be a date only. We want a date to. Again, let's select date only. Is this medical? And we want a choice column, and we're just going to have yes or no, and we'll have the default. We'll have it default to no. Now, is that all the fields for our form? Date from, day to, reason, and leave. Cool. Let's go back to Power Apps. Let's click create. So now we have our CDS leave form. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Right, I'll just change that to text area. It didn't seem to want to do that when I was creating the column, but you can see you can go back and edit. So this is a feature we really need to know how to do. If we select the drop down, we go edit column, we can go in and take a look at how each column is configured. But the other really important thing is we can get the logical name here of the column, and we're going to need that. We are going to need that when we're doing our submit later on. So just bear that in mind. I think that is all we need. Reason, date from, date to, medical. And you know, the other thing is, if I just hit this drop down here, I want to show created by as well, because we don't need to capture that in our submit, because Dataverse already does that for us. When we submit using the web API, it is automatically doing all of our authentication for us. So as long as our page has been set up needing authentication, then all we need to do is, well, when we're using web API, all of that logged in user stuff is all sent via that the web API interface, and we don't need to do anything extra with that. So this is then captured in the created by automatically without us doing any code at all, which is really nice. So our app doesn't need to worry about this. We're just doing this. This happens automatically. Okay, so this is our Dataverse table setup, CDS leave form. And so if we go back to tables and we take a look at this list, CDS leave form, we can see it here. And this is the name, this crazy name that Dataverse gives it, which is fine. So is there a quick way that we can get this? Yeah, so we just go into properties and advanced properties. All right, we can do that after. So the great thing is we've got our table created now. So now, unfortunately, this is not completely ready to go just yet. So this is the last little bit of the puzzle. We need this Power Pages management app. And when we open this up, remember we opened this up while we had our site open. So this is our YouTube site. I clicked on Power Pages management. It opened up this particular site here, and it's connected, or it's in context to the YouTube site that we created. So what we need to do is we need to set a table permission here. We need to create a new one. And this interface is pretty clunky, but we're just going to call it CDS leave form. The table here, we hit this drop down and we find our list that we just created, or our table we just created. Should be called CDS leave form. Here it is here. Select that. The website, it's for our YouTube website, which is just this. That I think I just called it that particular name, which is it's the only one I've got configured in my test environment. So just bear in mind that this could have a different name to what you may be expecting. So another thing, just make sure you're selecting the website, the correct website that you want to allow this permission for. And what's the access? It needs to be global. And for our particular demo, we're just going to give it everything. And that's all we need. Let's click save. All right, creates that. All right, the other thing we need to do here is we need to add a web role, and we need to add authenticated users. So under web roles, I just add existing role. I clicked search and I'm looking for authenticated users. It brings that up for this particular site. So anyone that's authenticated to this site will be able to do this. And I add that particular role in there. Save and close. So that's our permission set up. So the last thing we need to do is just set up a couple of site settings that will allow the Web API interface to read the list and see all the fields inside of that list. So we need to go up to site settings, and there'll be a whole ton of settings in here. Just ignore all of that. And let's add a couple of settings for our list. So the first one is going to be Web API and our list name. So if we go back to our Power Apps, makepowerapps.com, we've still got our table open here that we created. If we go properties, go advanced, and get this logical name here. And we select that and enabled. For the website, we want to select our website, and for the value, we want to put true, and that's all we need for that. And we need one more. So Web API. Our list name again, and then fields. Under our website, select the website that we're working with, which is our demo site in my instance. And for the value, we just want to put a star in there, or asterisk in there, basically meaning that all of those fields we want to expose to the Web API. Let's click save and close. So if we go down to the bottom here, you can see I've added these two new settings to the site. And this now will allow our Web API to speak to this list directly. And that's really all we need as far as the different components are concerned. So we can go back to the Power Pages Management Studio. We can even close down these other tabs. I'm pretty sure I'll need this one. So I'll still need my Power Apps tables page where I've got my table open. So keep that open, but we don't need the Power Portal Studio or Power Pages management app open anymore. We just need Power Apps, and we need our Power Pages Development Studio open with our site open. And if we go back to editing our code, so the file we do that in is our .js file. Now currently it's blank, but we are about to put a whole heap of code in there to get it to do everything we need it to do. Now with using our web API, where there's one thing that we need to take care of first. Now, I know I mentioned at the start of this video that there's really no boilerplate we need to worry about. Well, I kind of lied, because there's a tiny little bit of JavaScript boilerplate we do need to include in every one of our Power Pages applications. And what this does is it takes care of all of our security, all of our secure communications, all of our authentication and encryption with the server. So we don't have to worry about any of that. Once we have this little bit of code, we just include that in each one of our applications. Now, for simplicity's sake, for the simplicity of this demo, I'm going to include that bit of code here. Now, I know some developers will put this in a file somewhere else and then just sort of import it into their project. And you can do that. You could also do that with some of the CSS as well. And it kind of makes sense to do that if you're building lots of applications and you just want to have one place where you're modifying this code. But I think to keep it as simple as possible, it really does simplify things a lot by just using the .js file here for our page and considering each one of these pages as its own application. So all the code that it's sort of self-contained. So all the code for this YouTube demo today and our Lee form will be put into this page. And if you wanted to then pick it up and put it somewhere else, you could just pick this up and put it into a different environment and it will just work out of the box. So, that's why I'm sort of taking this approach, and this is why I think this is probably the simplest and best way to do it without sort of complicating things by having different imports and different code and sort of different sections. So let's just keep it all together for self-contained within this single page application. So the boilerplate we actually need is this right here. Now, first thing to note is that this is under a document ready function. So just forget everything else. Forget all this stuff first and just look at what this sort of top row is a document ready function. And this comes from jQuery. If you've worked with jQuery before, you'll recognize this as the jQuery syntax. And the good thing is to note that Power Pages just loads jQuery for you. So you don't need to this is the other thing you don't need to worry about including in your Power Pages application. It's already loaded. And that all happens behind the scenes. So we need this bit of code loaded when the page is ready. So it has to, once everything else is loaded on the page and all the other bits and pieces behind the scenes start, we want this code to be the last thing that happens on the page. And this is where we will also load all of our functions. So do all the extra sort of bits and pieces to wire in our form. All of those sort of messy bits and pieces that you need to worry about when you're communicating with the server, this will be handled here. So if your application requires you to be logged in, then this is all handled within this particular function. And even if it isn't, even if it's like an anonymous website, you still will need this to communicate securely with your Dataverse table and using Web API. So this is something you'll include in every single one of your Power Pages applications. Now, I will include this code just like all the rest of the code and all the HTML and everything we've done today. I'll include this in the GitHub repository, but just please note that you'll need this for everything that you do. And if you want, you can just freeze the screen right now and type it in to your own application. And then once you've got it, you can just rinse and repeat that every time you build a new app in Power Pages. Really simple. But here it is here. And you'll see this other function call. So this is my own function call. You won't necessarily need this. So we can just get rid of this. This is the entirety of what you need to get Web API running. So what I like to do is I like to add a new function called start. What do I call it? Startup procedure. And what this sort of, when I look at this, I think, okay, so everything that's specific to my application that I'm building will start here. So like I said, all of this stuff is just the boilerplate that we need, and this will be in every single app that you build. But startup procedure will, everything inside of startup procedure will be specific to the application I'm currently building. And we just want to call that function right at the bottom here, but still inside of our document ready function. Okay. So under startup procedure, what do we want to do? If we go back and quickly look at our form here, we want to take everything from date from, oh, that's just date from. Sorry. Let's go back up and quickly fix this. Let's click save. Better save this JavaScript as well. Go up and sync this. Okay, from day 2, that's better. Now, if we go back to our JavaScript and so back to our Power Pages page. And first thing what do we want to do here? There's not much. This is such a simple example. All we really want to do is wire in our submit code. We don't have any validation we need to worry about. We don't have any sort of hide and show fields based on things that I'm selecting. All of that stuff is possible inside of this environment now, because because we're building our application using the Web API and we're using HTML and JavaScript, sky is the limit. We've got pretty much no limitations on what we want our app to do, which is really where the power comes from here. Like when we unlock this type of building applications, we're not limited by anything. The only concerns that you might have moving forward is how do we govern, or how do we instill some governance on how these applications look? And that's a completely different sort of problem that your organization or as a developer you need to sort of work out. But that's a problem that sort of is across any kind of development. Like when you're building an application for a company, you need to make sure that you're following the sort of look and feel for that they have already established. And if they haven't established a look and feel, it's probably up to you as a developer, especially if you've been doing this for a long time, to suggest these things to the client, like to suggest to them, this is sort of this is a style guide on how you should be building your apps moving forward. That way their users will always have a consistent look and feel across all of their apps in their environment. And that's the same for if you're building SharePoint stuff, if you're building sort of React applications, you're building Canvas Power Apps. Maybe not so much Model, because Model is really sort of very one size fits all. But for any other development, software development, really you have to sort of consider the look and feel and a consistent UI across all of your applications for that particular client or that environment. So if we go back to, so like I said, this is a pretty simple one. So all we need to really worry about is our submit event. So if I create a new function here, and I'm going to call it submit leave form event. And from our startup procedure, I want to call that function. Now, you might say, well, how come I'm not just calling the submit leave form event here? Well, I could, but as my app grows, or as I add more functionality, I might want to create more functions that will necessarily run or be specific to my app. So I don't necessarily want to clutter my document ready function with all my different app calls down here, all my different function calls, I should say, down here. I've split them up out into the startup procedure that's specific to when my app starts up. So this way I like to sort of separate this out. Now under my leave form, this is where I need to set up all the event that takes place when the form button or when this submit button is clicked. I need to configure what this actually does. So my submit form event, the first thing I want to do, and I'm going to use some jQuery here. And this will be the ID of the form. So what is my form ID? It is leave form. And it's the submit event. Oh, I need a dot after that. And under here, we just we're going to define a function. This function returns an event. Okay, so everything under this particular, in this section, will be what will happen when we click submit. So the first thing I want to do is this event object. Sorry, I think I said before this returns an event. This is what we're passing to the function. So this is a submit function event. And the event what I want to do with this is actually prevent default. So why I'm doing that because by default, when these HTML forms, if there's a submit event configured for this button, it will refresh the page, like it doesn't sort of, it sort of, when if you're doing a post or whatever, it will refresh the HTML page, and we don't want it to do that. We just want it to run our code. So this line of code here just prevents that refresh from happening. Now, the next thing we need to do is to get these values from the form, and we need to get them into we need to read them into our JavaScript function. So the easy way to do that is just to select them from our HTML document, and we can just create some variables here. So I'm going to create a variable called date from, and that will be, and we can just use this document get element by ID, which is a built-in function. If you've done any web programming before, you probably use this a million times. and we just need to give it the ID. Remember, these are these IDs that I gave the fields, so date to, date from. So date from, and we want the value. We want to, the value. Now we want to do the same thing for date to. So let's just call this date to, and it'll be ID date to. Okay, so in the next one we want is reason. So we want var reason. I'm going to use some jQuery here. I'm just going to select the text area reason.val, and this will push our value that we typed into our text area for reason inside of this reason variable. What else do we have here? Date from, date to, reason, and if it's medical or not. Okay, so this is going to be slightly more complicated. So let's create a variable called selected radio button. And I'm going to use the document query selector. And in here, we want to put input. Name equals, and this will be the name of the field. And the name of the field is medical. See how both of these input fields have, because they're both radio buttons. If we go back and look at the form, we want this to be what? This is just one value. So the way the radio button works, this is why it's a little bit different from a normal HTML import field, because there's two controls here that are basically linked to one value. So if we click yes, then they are, or if we click no, see how the radio button changes based on what we can't sort of select both, we're selecting one or the other. So that's why we have to refer to this in a slightly different way. We have to refer to it via its name, not its ID. And the value that we're capturing, sorry, I keep flicking back to on the tabs, but I should be using the tabs in the VS Code. So the name of that is called medical. But what we actually want, we want to grab, we just want to grab the value, and we want to grab we want to create a pointer to the control that is checked. So we just want to, we're just concerned about which one the user actually checked. So that's the way we do that. And the last thing is we actually want to get the value, and we want to convert that to a true or false value, because I already know in advance that Dataverse, when we're doing a yes or no or a Boolean value in Dataverse, that we need to save that as a true or false from our form in HTML or our form in JavaScript, and the web API will expect a true or false value in there, not a yes or no. So this is where I need to do the conversion here. So let's call this, this is called medical. And the medical value will be the selected radio button value. We'll just do sort of a shorthand if statement here. So if the medical value is equal to yes, then return true, otherwise return false. Okay, so that's our checkbox. That's our radio button, and that's all of our fields sort of added to these variables. So now we've got all of our values that we've captured in our form saved to these JavaScript values. So the next thing we want to do is get all those values into a record. So we need another variable. I'm going to just call this record. And we'll just initialize that as an empty record. So here is where we need to populate this record with our fields from our Dataverse table. So we need to insert all of those fields directly from our HTML form into the record. So the first field we're going to populate, so over here, this needs to correspond directly to what is in our Dataverse table. So let's do the reason field first. And we're in our make.powerapps.com site where we created our table, and we hit the drop down and we go edit column. This is a really quick and easy way to find out what the value will be. We click advanced options and we can see here the logical name is this, and we need the logical name. So I'm just hitting Control C on that. Go back to Visual Studio Code inside of our Power Portal Developer Studio, and we come back here and we paste that. And this has to be this logical name, and this is going to equal the value, the variable that we set with the reason value. So the next one we'll do is our date from. And as it turns out, I can see here that I think I told you before that we need to convert this date format to work with JavaScript and Dataverse, but it looks like we actually don't. We can take the value directly from the date picker and push it straight into Dataverse. So that simplifies things quite a lot. So this is just going to equal record, and then we need to get our date from. So we edit column, and we get this date from logical name here. Go back to Visual Studio Code, paste that in there, and this will just be date from variable. Date to, you can see here date from. And record. And let's get the date to. Hit this drop down, edit column. Copy that. So I'm just hitting Control, highlighting it, and hitting Control C, going back to Visual Studio Code and pasting that date to, and this will just be that date to variable, which is coming from here. The last value is this medical. So we want to add that to the record, and up here we go to medical, edit column, grab that, we add that to record, and we just want to add the medical variable that we set up here. So that's our record created. Now we need to construct our web call now. Now we have our data. we need to do our call to Web API, and we're going to use this helper function that we've already configured down here. So we can use that now. So we go Web API. Just going to just copy and paste this top bit because I've already got this off screen here. If I just paste that in there, that's the first bit. So we're doing a post, and then the content type is application JSON. And then we need to set another parameter called URL. And the URL will be slash, because we're calling this from the site. So we just need to get to the underscore slash API. And this will be the the list name here. So if we go back to our Power Apps table config, and we go up to properties, we need this guy, logical name. Go back to Visual Studio Code and we enter that. And the next line in this record we need to set is the data, and we just want to use this built-in JavaScript function called JSON stringify, and we want to stringify this record that we've already created up here just above this Web API call. So this now creates this package that we're going to send to the server. All we need to do here is now set a success condition and an error condition. So that's everything that we want to happen after we've pasted, we'll put in there. And then we also want to capture the error as well. And in here, let's just do a console log. So if we do get an error, we can see what it is. Okay, sorry, I just had to fix a couple of those brackets there. So yeah, so that's how our function will look. So underneath our success here, we have, typically what we would have here is like display a message on the screen saying, yep, you've submitted your leave form. You might want to do this, that, and that. But look, from a like a demo point today, we won't really bother about doing anything more. We just really wanted to get this bare bones down for this initial video, just to show you how to post data, and then perhaps we'll do more in a follow-up video. So let's just do an alert here saying let's not mess up the code. So in this code here, we're just going to put leave form submitted successfully. And maybe under the error, so we can see it, failed to submit. So we should see here if we get some kind of error. So I've saved that. Well, let's just save it again. Let's go File, Save. That's saved. Don't need to save this. Let's just save that again. Oh, one last thing before we test this out. Just one thing you need to make sure is when you're putting your list name in your Web API call, it needs to be the pluralized version. Now, if you've called your list, this is where it gets a little bit clunky, but just bear with me. If you've called your list, if I'd called the list leave forms, then what Power Pages does is it its pluralized version of that list will still be leave forms. So this will be exactly the same for the name and for the pluralized version. If we go over to here and take a look at the properties, so we go back to Power Pages and we go to Advanced, we can see there is there a pluralized version here? No, there isn't. Oh yeah, up here. So plural name leave forms. Now, this is not super apparent, but this is what you need to do for this to work properly. So under your, if we go back to Visual Studio Code, under your API call here, we need to have leave. This needs to be the pluralized version of it. So if you called your list leave forms, then this will be the same for your name and for your, whatever you're doing, it's always going to be plural. But if you say, like with my example, I called it leave form, which this is probably a bit of a mistake on my part. I really should have called this leave forms, because then the actual name of down here, the logical name would have been leave forms, not leave form. But when you're doing your web API call, you need to make sure that you're using the pluralized version here. So always make sure that you're using whatever is the pluralized version, either the name you called it or the plural version if you didn't make it plural. Okay. That out of the way. Really painful. Super sorry about that. But anyway, so that's saved now. I've saved that. And if I go to here, I sync. This is my management studio. Sorry, this is my development studio here for Power Pages. I sync that up. I click preview. It's going to load my refresh my form with my new submit code. And everything created. Okay, so the other thing to make sure, because remember how I set this to authenticated users, I need to make sure that I'm logged in here. So I'm now logged into my page. I click on, say I want my leave from the 20th to the 30th. My reason for leaving is, well, let's just put this is a test reason. And I'm going to make the leave request yes. I'm going to say it's medical, because remember when I set up this column in Dataverse, I set it to default to no. So we just want to make sure we're capturing yes here, and we are setting this value to something. So I'm going to click submit. Now remember, we didn't do any behavior here. We just did nothing at this point. And we just put the alert when it's done. Now you can see there's a few seconds for that to actually operate. So to create a really nice interface here, you would probably want to, when the user clicks submit, before calling the web call, you probably want to maybe, what I normally do is I make the screen go dim, and then I just place a message on there, like to say, saving form. And then once it's completed, then I get rid of that and I put this message up on the screen to say form submitted. But we didn't do any of that because, this video is already getting really long. And as you can see, there's lots to fit in on one video. So I just really wanted to show you the basics today. So we can see our alert has come up. So we've hit that. We've gone through and we've had a success here because we've gotten this alert. We didn't get this alert. We got this alert, leave form submitted successfully. So we know our web API call has worked. So if we go back to our Dataverse table and we just click refresh on here, and we can see our record has been stored, which is fantastic. And it's even captures are created by. Now, don't worry about this. This is just because I am going for my demo, my test environment, my development environment. If you're in an actual live environment, this will capture the correct data for who created it. So yeah, we can see we're saving our record from a custom web page that we created. Now, this is such a simple, like I've said, a few times so far. This is just a really simple example of how to of an application. We could do so much with this. We could do animation, we can have validation, we can have multiple screens, we could create our own custom HTML controls, HTML pickers. We can do all of the branding that we like. We can have this all run in one page and a really fantastic experience for the user. Now, if you want me to go further with this, if you feel that you've learnt enough and you're kind of like, the light bulb is switched on for you and you're thinking, yep, this is all I need to do. I can understand this code perfectly. I know I can just look up if I want to do any other web API calls, like maybe read data from the server. I know I just need to look that up and I can basically use the same pattern over and over. If you're in that boat, I'm glad I was able to help. Happy coding. Now, if you would like me to keep going with this demo, or sort of keep going with this series of demos, and maybe in the next video I could show you how to create maybe a gallery display of all of the leaf forms that have been created, perhaps even show you how to do some validation, and have this button grayed out until we filled out all the fields. Maybe have some fields pop up and display when say if we select medical reason, we might want an extra field to appear that we don't necessarily want to show on the form until a certain selection has been selected. We could do that. We can also do other stuff, like I can also show you all that stuff that I talked about, how to pretty up this form even more. So like have these things like when we click submit, have the form sort of dim, and that's really just putting a div over the screen that has an opacity and then showing a message and maybe a little animated GIF or something. We can do all of that stuff. Just let me know in the comments below if you want me to continue. If you don't leave that comment, then I don't know you want me to keep going with this series of videos. So I will basically just leave it there. So yeah, make sure you let me know if you want to see more, and I will show you more. But for now, hopefully that is enough to get you started, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi guys, it's me at the end to remind you to hit the like button if you like this video and to subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest content on this channel. I thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.